I completely disagree with your entire premise that I have lied or am misleading the FBI. If I were, the results that I announced today by the men and women of the FBI and the historic records we are doing to keep this country safe would not be possible. The men and women of the FBI are responding to our leadership and this administration's priorities. The only way people get terminated at the FBI is if they fail to meet the muster of the job and their duties. And that is where I will leave it. And you accusing me of lying is something I don't take lightly, but I'm not going to get into a tit for tat with you.
A United States senator just told the director of the Federal Bureau of Investigation that he lied. Not that he was mistaken. Not that he misremembered. Not that his answers were incomplete or imprecise. That he lied. And Kash Patel's response was not to deny the specific lie. It was to say that the accusation itself was something he did not take lightly. Those are two very different things. In the next 17 minutes, you are going to understand exactly what Senator Richard Blumenthal was referring to. Not from a political perspective. From a documented, word-by-word comparison of what Patel said under oath in January 2025 and what he said under oath in September 2025. Because buried inside hours of shouting, gavels, and political theater, Patel made one specific word choice that tells you more about this story than anything either side said in anger. One word. Added quietly. Between his confirmation and his oversight hearing. That word is the story. January 2025. Senate confirmation hearing. Kash Patel is not yet the FBI director. He is a nominee, sitting before a committee that has the power to confirm or reject him. Under those circumstances, he made two specific commitments. The first was spoken. He said, directly and clearly, that there would be no politicization at the Federal Bureau of Investigation. That there would be no retaliatory actions taken by the FBI should he be confirmed. The second was written. In his official Senate questionnaire response, which is part of the permanent congressional record, Patel stated, all FBI employees will be held to the absolute same standard and no one will be terminated for case assignments. Read that second sentence one more time. No one will be terminated for case assignments. No qualifier. No legal nuance. No wiggle room. Those were the words. That was the promise. It was written. It was submitted. It is in the official record. 8 months later, Senator Blumenthal sat in that hearing room with that document in front of him and said he was not going to mince words. And the reason he used those exact words was because of what Patel said in the same hearing room when Adam Schiff asked him about the fired agents.
Standard, no one will be terminated for case assignments. Are you testifying today that you never terminated anyone at the FBI, in whole or in part, because of a prior case assignment?
No one at the FBI is terminated for case assignments alone.
Well, I'm asking about you, Mr. Patel. Did you, in whole or in part, terminate anyone at the FBI because they worked on the Trump investigation or because they worked on January 6th?
No one at the FBI has been terminated for case assignments alone.
Okay, you're saying alone. Does that mean they were terminated in part because they were assigned to a January 6th case or assigned to the Mar-a-Lago case? You're being very precise here, Mr. Patel. You're saying alone. That means they were fired in part because they were assigned those cases. Is that your testimony?
Absolutely not. But if you want to keep putting words in my mouth,
then
go
let
ahead.
me ask you.
That exchange is the center of this entire story. And I want to slow it all the way down because most coverage moved past it in seconds. In January, the written commitment was, no one will be terminated for case assignments. In September, the sworn testimony was, no one is terminated for case assignments alone. That single word changed the entire legal and moral meaning of the statement. Without the word alone, the commitment is absolute. Nobody gets fired because of what cases they worked on. Period. With the word alone, the commitment becomes something completely different. It means you cannot fire someone exclusively for case assignments. But you can fire them for case assignments plus something else. And that something else can be as thin as a performance record that happens to be reviewed only after someone notices what cases they worked on. Adam Schiff caught it in real time. He did not let it pass. He said the word out loud. He pointed directly at it. He asked whether the precise use of that word meant agents were terminated in part because of their January 6 assignments or their Mar-a-Lago assignments. Patel did not answer the question. He repeated the sentence with the word alone still in it. That non-answer is now part of the permanent Senate record. And it matters for a reason that goes directly to what Blumenthal called a lie. Now let us look at what actually happened to the agents who were fired. Because the names and the timelines are documented. And they tell a very specific story. The first is Steve Jensen. Jensen helped oversee the Federal Bureau of Investigation's work on the January 6 investigation. That is confirmed by multiple news organizations and Senate testimony. He was fired. The second is Brian Driscoll. Driscoll served as acting FBI director in the early days of the Trump administration. He resisted Justice Department demands to supply the names of agents who had investigated January 6 defendants. That resistance is documented. He was fired. The third is Chris Meyer. Meyer was incorrectly identified on social media as having participated in the investigation into Trump's retention of classified documents at Mar-a-Lago. The rumor was false. His connection to that investigation was not confirmed. He was fired anyway. There is a fourth name. Walter Giardina. Giardina was a longtime agent who worked on cases that involved Trump. He was fired while his wife was days from dying of a terminal illness. A fellow agent personally begged for mercy on his behalf. That request was denied. Patel has said, on the Senate record, that every one of these terminations was based on performance and failure to uphold constitutional duties. He has not provided specific performance documentation for any of them in open session. He has cited ongoing litigation as the reason. The lawsuit filed by 3 of these agents tells a different story. And parts of that story involve names that go well beyond Kash Patel.
There is mounting evidence that these retaliatory firings were the result of direction from the White House. There have been instances in the past history of the Bureau of political interference and political direction from the director's office, but not the kind of institutional interference that we're seeing from the White House right now. I'm going to ask you, has anyone from the White House contacted you about personnel decisions?
I completely disagree with your entire premise that I have lied or am misleading the FBI. If I were, the results that I announced today by the men and women of the FBI and the historic records we are doing to keep this country safe would not be possible. The men and women of the FBI are responding to our leadership and this administration's priorities. The only way people get terminated at the FBI is if they fail to meet the muster of the job and their duties. And that is where I will leave it. And you accusing me of lying is something I don't take lightly, but I'm not going to get into a tit for tat with you.
Well, let me just say.
Patel's denial was clean. Direct. Stated 3 times in slightly different forms within 30 seconds. He does not take orders from the White House on personnel decisions. He has never taken orders from the White House on personnel decisions. Nobody at the White House has ever given him an order on a personnel decision. 3 versions. Same claim. But the lawsuit filed by the 3 fired agents introduces a set of specific allegations that Patel's denial must now sit alongside. And because these are allegations in active federal litigation, they are clearly labeled here as unverified claims that have not been adjudicated. The lawsuit alleges that Stephen Miller, a senior White House advisor, called for widespread firings at the Federal Bureau of Investigation. The lawsuit alleges that Emil Bove, who was the 3rd-ranking official at the Department of Justice, planned to terminate anyone who had clashed with the president's agenda. And the lawsuit alleges something that is perhaps the most significant claim of all. That Patel himself understood the firings were likely illegal, but carried them out because he was ordered to do so from the White House. Patel has denied all of this, specifically and directly, in the hearing and through his legal representatives. But here is the structural problem his denial creates. He told the Senate he never takes orders from the White House on personnel decisions. The lawsuit alleges the opposite. One of those 2 things is true. And a federal court will eventually be required to determine which one. That is not a political conclusion. That is how civil litigation works.
You are the biggest fraud to ever sit in the United States Senate. You are a disgrace to this institution and an utter coward.
I'm not surprised
I'm not
I'm
surprised
not
that you continue to lie
surprised
from
that
your
that the-
perch and put on a show
two of you-
so you can go
of you-
raise money
well,
for your
and for good
charade.
reason.
You are a political buffoon at best.
Well, you can take an internet troll.
Take it to the bank that the FBI is protecting this country and the state and citizens of California. We are bringing historic reform.
Most coverage of that exchange focused on the insults. The words themselves. The spectacle of a Senate hearing descending into the kind of language you would expect from a comment section, not a federal oversight proceeding. That is the wrong place to look. What that exchange actually revealed was something more significant than anger. It revealed the precise moment Patel lost control of the narrative he had carefully constructed across the entire hearing. For almost 4 hours, Patel had maintained a specific strategy. Cite crime statistics. Reference child predator captures. Redirect to prior administrations. Use the word alone. The strategy was working. He was not answering the questions, but he was not losing ground either. The record was filling with deflections but no damaging admissions. Then Schiff did something different from every other senator who had questioned him that day. Schiff did not ask about the fired agents. He did not ask about the polygraphs. He did not ask about court orders or case files or staffing numbers. He asked about the word alone. He held up Patel's own written confirmation commitment. He read it out loud. Then he read Patel's September testimony out loud. And he asked, in a hearing room full of cameras and a national audience, whether those two statements meant the same thing. That was the question Patel could not deflect with statistics. And the moment he realized he could not deflect it, the composure broke. What you heard in those insults was not a man winning an argument. It was a man who understood that the argument had already been lost on the record, and who chose volume over logic. There is one more thing that happened in this hearing that has received almost no attention. And it is more significant than the shouting because it came from Patel himself, voluntarily, without being asked. Early in the hearing, before the most contentious exchanges, Patel described his mandate as FBI director in his own words. He said that when President Trump appointed him, the president gave him 2 specific assignments. Crush violent crime. Defend the homeland. Then he added a third. On his own. Without being asked. He said the president also told him to level the institution that has become the weaponization of law enforcement. Level the institution. Those 3 words are Patel's own. Chosen by him. Spoken voluntarily. On the Senate record. Now place those 3 words alongside his January confirmation commitment. No one will be terminated for case assignments. No politicization. No retaliatory actions. A director who is executing a mandate to level an institution is engaged in structural transformation. That is a different mission from protecting agents from political retribution. Those 2 goals do not coexist naturally. And when Senator Blumenthal said he was not going to mince words, what he was doing was placing those 2 statements side by side on the official record and asking Patel to explain the distance between them. Patel said he did not take the accusation lightly. He did not close the distance. 3 specific developments to track in the weeks and months ahead. The first is the federal lawsuit filed by Driscoll, Jensen, and Evans. That case is moving through the courts. If it survives early motions to dismiss and enters the discovery phase, both sides will be required to exchange documentation. Communications between the FBI Director's Office and the White House about personnel decisions become potentially subject to court-ordered disclosure. That process will either confirm or disprove the allegations Patel has denied. The second is the staffing numbers question. Patel refused in this hearing to say how many agents have been fired, forced out, or left the agency since Trump took office. He would not provide replacement numbers either. Those figures are not classified. They reflect the operational capacity of the nation's primary federal law enforcement agency. Congress has the authority to compel that disclosure. Whether it does will tell you something about the institutional pressure on this question going forward. The third is the word alone. Schiff put it on the record. The written confirmation commitment does not contain it. The oversight testimony does. That discrepancy is now permanently documented in 2 separate Senate proceedings. If any of the fired agents can demonstrate in federal court that their case assignments were among the reasons, even partial reasons, for their termination, that single word becomes the evidentiary foundation of a very significant finding. A linguist would call what Patel did between January and September hedging. A prosecutor would call it something with more specific legal implications. A court will eventually decide what to call it. Here is what the documented Senate record shows from this hearing. Kash Patel told the Senate in January 2025 that no one would be terminated for case assignments. Kash Patel told the Senate in September 2025 that no one is terminated for case assignments alone. For agents with documented connections to cases involving Trump or January 6 were fired in the months between those two statements. Patel denied receiving White House direction on personnel decisions. A federal lawsuit alleges he understood those firings were likely illegal but carried them out because of White House direction. Those allegations are unverified and actively disputed. He described his mandate as including leveling an institution. In the same proceeding where he was defending himself against allegations of politicization. He called a United States senator the biggest fraud in Senate history rather than answer the question about what the word alone means for the agents who lost their careers. And Senator Blumenthal said he was not going to mince words. Neither are we. The word alone was not an accident. Words chosen by federal officials under oath, in Senate confirmation proceedings, in the presence of legal counsel, are not accidents. They are decisions. The decision to add that word between January and September tells you that somewhere between the confirmation hearing and the oversight hearing, the answer to the question of whether case assignments played a role in personnel decisions shifted from a simple no to something that required more careful architecture. That architecture is now in federal court. 2 questions for the AVA reports community. The first. Based on the documented record, do you believe the addition of the word alone between Patel's January commitment and his September testimony was a deliberate legal hedge? Or do you believe both statements mean the same thing and Schiff was reading too much into a word choice? The second. Should Congress compel Patel to provide specific documented justification for each of the more than 18 field office leadership terminations he has overseen, with case file documentation redacted for active investigations? Yes or no? And tell me why. Drop both answers below. This community reads them. These debates matter. Subscribe to AVA Reports for coverage that stays grounded in what was actually said on the official record. Thank you for watching.